Hey guys, welcome back to SynAck Time. My name is Ben, and in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at Wekan. This was actually requested by one of my subscribers. I'm totally going to mess up your name, but I know it's like Retron IT or maybe Retronaut. Anyway, that's what ChatGPT said. I am terrible at leet speak, so please forgive me if I messed that up. But he said that there is not a video out there for Wekan on how to set it up with Portainer. So I decided to jump in and give it a shot. But for those of you that have never seen this software before, I do want to kind of give you a brief demonstration to see if it's something that maybe you're interested in too. So let's go ahead and jump in. The Wekan is basically a Kanban board. And if you've never used one of those, it's basically an easy way to do kind of like project management. You can have different columns and put tasks in those columns and allows you to track the progress. And Wekan pretty much just blows it out of the park because it does a whole lot of stuff, especially down to the most finite detail. And I'm going to show you kind of everything about that, but I wanted to show you how it kind of stacks up against other software like Trello. So Trello is very, very good too. I mean, they have essentially the same features, except the thing about Wekan is it's open source, so you don't have to pay for it. Trello does have kind of a free version as well, but you are limited to certain things, right? You can only have so many boards. You can have so many commands run per month, but it's very flexible. But for those of you who are like me that value privacy, I don't want anybody else having access to my project or the confidential details that are inside of there. Maybe I want to host it on my own server, or maybe I'm just thinking, hey, I love free with no limitations, and that's where Wekan comes into place and gives you all of that and more. But enough of me talking. Let me show you the software. So this is my Wekan site. I went ahead and set it up on my SynHow, and this is blank. This is exactly what you see when you first sign in, a blank slate, and you're ready to go. I want to cover a couple of the administrative things you can do before we jump into the tasks. So if we jump over to our little icon and we click on Admin Panel, we have different ways to customize our site. So do you want to disable self-registration? Maybe I don't want everybody to be able to join themselves. Maybe I want to do the same thing for forgotten passwords. We have a way for you to test the email integration. If you do set up your SMTP server, you can actually have it email out users the credentials if they've got password. It's not a requirement, but it is something that you can do. From there, have basic settings like can they change their email, can they change their username, things like that. Some visibility settings here. Boards visibility, allow private boards only. That's something that you can do. Let's go ahead. We also have an announcement. Do we want to make a system-wide announcement? Very handy. And then we have our layout. Do you want to be able to customize the logos that are on the site? Do you want to be able to put in different links and information about logos, stuff like that? Or do you just want to hide it all together? So say that, and there, no logo at all. And lastly, we have global webhooks. I'm not going to cover that too much. It does have an API you could totally use. All right, so next up we have people. And it starts at a high level. It starts at our organization level. So we can create organizations. Basically think of them as companies. So if you wanted to allow other people to be able to use this site from other companies, you can. Totally optional, not required, but you can set that up. Next up, we also have teams. So say we wanted to create teams and put those people into those teams and then give permission to teams instead of individual users. So maybe you have a development department and they're in charge of doing these tasks. Then you have accounting and they're in charge of doing this other task. Lastly, we have our people. These are all the individual accounts that we will be adding to our Wekan site. Not too much to really go in here. We can add name, username, email address, imported usernames. Not sure what that is. Admin or not. Yes. Active. Cool. authentication types. It does support OAuth. I'm not going to really cover the configuration of that, but if you're interested in it, they have more than enough documentation to walk you through setting up OAuth so you can do the whole Microsoft sign-in, Google sign-in, whatever, and you don't have to really worry about it on here so much. From there, you assign, your organizations, your teams, and lastly, your password. All right, next up we have reports. So you can generate reports based off of the activity in your boards. Nothing too fancy in here, especially since I don't have any boards set up. Lastly, we have attachments. Did somebody upload an attachment? You'll be able to see all of those. Really helpful if you're uploading screenshots, if you're uploading files, code, whatever. Translation, pretty self-explanatory there. And then we have our version number and all of the technical stats that go along with our server. So now that we've covered the admin settings, let's go ahead and jump into creating our first board. And let me show you how super complex that we can get and super detailed with our board. So I'm going to go to all boards and I'm going to add a new board. I'm going to create this one, and this is going to be house chores. You can set up templates, create templates from here too. So if you have one that you use consistently and it's very repeatable, hey man, set it up as a template, save yourself oodles of time when it comes to creating these. Otherwise, it's kind of a manual process. All right, so once we are jumped into our board for house chores, what we need to do is we need to set up some columns. We need to add a progression state for these chores. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a list. And this first list is going to be planned. So chores that I have in my idea, things that I need to do. And next I'm going to do, let's see here. How about in progress? Oh, we have in progress. And now I'm going to put done. So these are chores I've finished, I'm done with them. And I'm going to add one more. I'm going to put on hold. Maybe these chores, something got in the way. Maybe, wasn't ready, didn't have all the stuff that I needed for them. And so I'm going to add that one here. So after that, I'm done. I'm going to hit X, and now I have my columns. Okay, next up we have swim lanes, and think of that as different types of chores. So maybe we have one for homework, or maybe we have one for shopping or stuff like that. So we don't want to group all of our chores into one type, because there's a bunch of different chores. There's around the house chores, there's laundry chores, all of our stuff. So let's add a swim lane. Let's add our swim lane, and we're just going to call this shopping. So you see we have our same columns set up, right? And we can move stuff between the columns and between the chore types or the swim lanes as well. So let's do this. We got shopping and we got default. Let's call default something a little bit more interesting. Let's call this cleaning. This is kind of cleaning chores. So we can also adjust the order of these by just simply clicking and dragging, and it has such a cool little dragging interface. I do absolutely love it. So those are the only two swim lanes I'm going to create right now, but you can make as many as you want, as well as many boards as you want. So if you didn't want to mix shopping and cleaning into the same Kanban board, there's nothing preventing you from just creating another board altogether. So now we have to come down to our individual chores that we're going to be making, that we're going to be planning, we're going to be progressing, done, or possibly on hold. And that's where we come down here and we click on our cards. Now we want to add our cards. So we click on our cards. The first cleaning, man, I hate to do it, but we are going to have to mop the kitchen floors. And now instead of you having to click this add, whenever you click like the return on your keyboard, it's going to set up for the next item, which makes adding it just so much quicker. So we're going to shop for groceries. I'm just going to call it groceries. And now what else am I going to do here? I got to clean the bathrooms, man. I got to clean the bathrooms. Not fun. Next, we're going to be doing laundry. Yeah, someone's got to do it. And then I'm going to be, let's see what else we got. What kind of chores do you like to do? I'm going to say that I don't like to do any of the chores. How about I'm going to clean the TVs. And lastly, let's vacuum. Vacuum. There you go. All right, so once we did that, we're going to click the X button down here, and we're done with our individual cards. Now comes the really cool part, and I want you to kind of use your imagination a little bit here, because imagine you're doing programming or something a little bit more detailed and needs a lot of complex information in each card. Well, Wekan's got you covered. So you click on any of these guys, and it brings up this ability to really add more detail to it. So we can assign it to different people. We can assign it to different members of our household, maybe different teams. Maybe we have a downstairs team and an upstairs team. Probably doesn't work too much with house cleaning, but I'm not going to judge you. I don't know how your family's set up. So we can also assign these to people. So, SynAck, I know, lack of a better word, he's always assigned to doing the mopping of the kitchen floors. That's his job. That's his thing that he's going to be doing now. But as we add more people, we can assign more chores to individuals. So maybe SynAck's the only people we have in this system. So let's say that maybe he doesn't want to do all that himself. So once we do assign a task, and again, optional, you can pretty much give everybody access to this and they can do the assignments themselves. All right, I'm going to X that out. Now we have our checklist of things that we need to do. After that, we also do have subtasks. I'm not going to bore you with that too much, but then after that, we have our attachments. So if there is a file that we want to attach, maybe a piece of code if we're doing software development, or an image of maybe what a perfectly mopped floor looks like, a little bit of inspiration, we can do that as well. We can also comment on the tasks. Maybe SynAck is just saying, I love mopping floors. Nothing more than I love than mopping floors. All of this will be documented. All of it will be recorded. You can see that everything that we have done is shown down here in our activities, and we can thumbs up it. Just a little bit of extra touch there. So you can really see how you can do it extremely detailed with all of the different parts of the Kanban board. So I think we're good there. So before we move on, let's check one more thing. I want to show you, if you click on these little lines at the top here, we can add voting. And one thing I really love is the ability to color code. So let's change the color of this one. We're going to change it to blue. Save that. Awesome. And let's go ahead and close this out. And check it out. We got a cool little blue card here. If you want to change any other properties on these cards really quickly, you can also click on the three lines here. We can set colors. We can edit the labels, change the due date. Maybe this particular task has to be done by a particular date, and there's have a deadline in there. Maybe cleaning the bathrooms, that has to happen like right now. So we're going to make that due date. We're going to make that today at 5 p.m. We got a little bit of a due date, a little bit of priority there. So not only can you change the color of these individual cards, you can also change the color of the columns themselves, which this is really cool. So make that green, maybe, and done is, perhaps they make that one orange for some strange reason, or a nice little blue. And then we can make on hold. Maybe that's not a great thing. Make that guy red. So as you do these tasks, this is a great thing about a Kanban board, is you simply drag the card from one column to the next, and the whole team sees this, so they know what's being worked on and what's the activity behind it. I can see that SynAck moved this from plan to in progress. I have a date when it was moved and a time. Great. And I can see it as it progresses down the different states. Maybe, let's see here. We did see that we set up one for shopping, and that one really, I think groceries belongs in shopping. So I'm going to move this one up to my other swim lane. So now I have groceries, which is shopping, up in my planned state. And as I said before, you can click on any of these. You can see pretty much the entire audit trail as far as how it's been progressed, what's been done to it, and if it's been changed or modified. So if you've never used one of these guys to organize your life or organize your projects that you're working on, it can be really helpful, especially in those situations where you have multiple people working on the same project. But there's nothing stopping you from doing it just yourself. Again, it's open source, and the only thing it takes is a little bit of time and effort setting up the server, which will lead us to our next step. I'm going to show you how to set this up with, we're going to be using a Linux server with Docker. We're going to be using Portainer, and we're also going to be using Nginx Proxy Manager to encrypt all of our traffic. So let's jump into the setup and I'll see you in there. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up our subdomain, and that will allow us to access our Wekan board no matter where we are in the world. This will also redirect the traffic to our external IP address, which will go to Nginx Proxy Manager, which will then head over to Docker. And we'll explain all that in just a second. So let's add our new record. I'm going to create an A record. I'm going to call this Wekan. And I'm going to take the IP address of my server, my external IP, and post it in there. I'm going to save all the changes. And now, while this is propagating out throughout the internet, I'm going to start the process of setting up the server on my side. So for this, we will be using Portainer. So if we navigate into Portainer, and let's go over to stacks. So the way that I've set this up is it's going to be very, very easy for you. I want to show you what you have to do whenever you use stacks. Is basically you provide it with a Docker Compose file. So this is the Docker Compose file for Wekan, and you can kind of see why Retronaut had me asked me about a video for Portainer. As if you do copy and paste this entire thing into Portainer, it kind of bombs. So I had to make some tweaks and some changes, but they're all within the recommended practices for Wekan. Very easy to do and understand. I created a GitHub for SynAck Time for instances just like this. So if we go to github.com/SynAckTime, let's see if it comes up. Perfect. Here we go. And we have a SynAck Time YouTube folder, and under that is our Wekan, and then we have our Docker Compose file. I'm going to put the address down below. Don't worry about trying to find it if you don't want to. But what I did is I took that Compose file and I stripped out all the text and everything, and I brought it down to something a little bit more easy to understand, which is just the variables and the environment things that we need in order to get this going. But one great thing about this Compose file is it's very compatible with Portainer, and it creates the network for you. It creates all the volumes for you. It pretty much does all the work for you and just gives you a working instance of Wekan. So can't argue with that, right? There's very little changes that you're gonna have to do here. So let's go ahead and let's click on Raw, and let's copy all of this text, very small amount. And let's go over to Portainer, and let's click on Add Stack. Let's give it a name. Just gonna call it Wekan. Bet you never would have guessed that. And let's paste that in here. Okay, so now that we have pasted our Docker Compose file into our stack, I do want to explain a little bit about what this file is doing, since you should have at least a basic knowledge before you deploy any software, really. So we can see the very first thing that we're doing is we are creating this Wekan DB container. We're going to be using Mongo version 6. We're also going to be calling this container Wekan-DB. Very important that we know that. Also, it's going to restart automatically. There's the command it's running and the network that it's going to be joining. And next up we have expose, and this is what port is being exposed to other containers on our network. This is 27017. That's fine. And now it's going to set up a couple of volumes for us. So this volume is going to be looking at etc local time, which means it's going to be looking at the local time file on your host machine. So we want to make sure that's accurate. It's going to be pulling the correct time zones from somewhere, and this is where it's going to be getting it from. Next up, we have our database. This is where we're going to be, storing our database files. This one's going to be using the DB volume. The DB dump is right there too, as well as our configuration files. We need a place to put those so that they're nice and safe and away from the container. So when we upgrade the container, we blow everything away and we recreate it, all your data is safe. Next up is our Wekan container that we're going to create. This is going to be pulling the image from this URL. It's going to be calling it Wekan app, always restarting, joining the same network. Hey, cool. But wait a second, what about our ports? Well, I commented those out, but I left them in there so you can know, what we're doing with that network traffic. We can't expose port 80 because Nginx already sitting on that port. It needs that port in order to function, but we're routing all of our traffic through Nginx Proxy Manager, so we don't need to expose it. We don't need to expose any port because all the traffic is going to be coming through that middleman. He's going to take care of any of our traffic for us getting to our Docker containers. He's also going to handle setting up our certificates for us. So as we keep scrolling down here, we have writable path is /data. That's fine. If you look down in volumes, that's already established and we called that volume files. Next up, we have our root URL. What I want you to do is I want you to change that to the URL that you set up with Namecheap. And we're going to also add HTTPS. We're going to put that in there instead of just HTTP because we want our traffic to be encrypted. So mine is set up for HTTPS //wekan.synAck.com. Cool. Next line I want you to take a look at is the SMTP. This is if you are planning on allowing it to have access to a mail server. Mail server is great for this because it can send out invitations, reminders. It can send out password resets, but it is not required. That's why we're not going to do that this time. We're not going to set up an SMTP server, but if you want to, you're more than welcome to. I think you could probably even use Google's if you want. If we scroll down, API, sure, fine, whatever. Richer card comment editor, you can if you want to. If you want to add a little bit more flavor to your card editor, yeah, sure, why not? Let's do that. Card opener webhook enabled, man, not really. Don't really care about setting up an API right now. Big event patterns, the rest of this stuff, we pretty much ignore really. We come down here, lastly, a couple of last things. Volumes, covered that, easy peasy, pulling that time zone. And now we have volumes. These are the volumes that we're going to create. And this will allow Portainer to create them in its own special format so that we know where they are. And last up is our network. We're going to be creating wekan-net. And it's going to be set in bridge mode. I'm going to let it determine its own IP address. So let's hit deploy. And once we deploy, boom, and it's just as easy and quick as that. May take a little bit longer on your side, especially if you've never done this before. Might take a few minutes to download the images. So now that we have set up Namecheap, we have set up Portainer, we got our stack deployed, we do need to set up Nginx Proxy Manager next. And for that, let's jump over to our Nginx Proxy Manager app. Let's make sure that it is also joined to the Wekan network. Otherwise, it's just not going to be able to get to it. So if we scroll down, very bottom, and click on Join Network, we're going to select our Wekan_Wekan-net, and we're going to join that network. All right, now we are all joined up. If we look at the bottom, we're getting an IP address. Awesome. All right, let's go back to containers. And now let's head over to our Nginx Proxy Manager. So I got my proxy hosts here. I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. Call it wekan.synhow.com. So now it wants to know, where do we want to send this traffic to? So if I look back at my Docker Compose file, I can see that it wanted to port map 80 to port 8080. So on the left, the 80 is my internet facing, and on the right, that's the container port. So I'm going to take and I'm going to use 8080, but I need to also know the name of the container, which for this, we got right here, Wekan app. I'm going to copy that name. I'm going to go back to Nginx Proxy Manager, paste in the host name, make sure I don't have any spaces, and I don't. And now for my port, that will be 8080. I'm going to block common exploits. I'm going to enable WebSocket support, and I'm going to save this guy. But we are not through yet. Almost, I swear. Let's go back under this guy and let's edit him. Let's go under SSL and let's request a new SSL. I'm going to force it and I'm going to agree to the terms of service and hit save. Now, assuming everything was set up with Namecheap and that you didn't skip over that step, we should be good to go, and it should disappear here in a second and tell us that we are awesome. We are using Let's Encrypt. Let's navigate over to our new site and see how it goes. All right, the demo gods were kind to us. So when you first get to this site, what you have to do is you have to register your first account. So that will be your admin account. The very first account that successfully registers with this will be automatically established as your admin. So you probably don't want to put it off. Well, let's go ahead and click register. Let's pick a username. For this, I'm just going to call it SynAck. My email address will be info@synackTime.com. My password, I'm just going to make it random. And I'm going to click register. Well, we got an error, right? Internal server error. So that internal server error basically means we did not set up our mail server. So it's trying to use a mail server to send an invite to say, hey, welcome, but it can't do that. So it's erroring out. But rest assured, it has been created. So what we'll do is we'll come back here to our sign in page and we'll punch in our username and our password. You can use your username or email address. I'm gonna type in a password that I established. There we go, we're in. So don't let that error message throw you off. It's just basically just can't find the mail server, but you don't need it. And even the developers say it's not a requirement, but it is an option that you can set up. All right, well, now that you're in, you're pretty much comfortable. I've already kind of walked you through how to use the platform earlier in this video. So jump in, see what you can create, and hopefully this will help you become a little bit more organized or plan, your projects and carry them from the beginning of the cycle all the way down to completed. Or if you just want to track your chores, you can do that too. All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this helped out. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Screen 2K.